who is this creepy person who's writing these books that are so spooky?
Meet Vera Strange, aka author Jennifer Brody, who writes the Disney Chills book series. Take this journey and learn about the series and the fun, but dark. Make that very dark. Author who brings Disney villains into today's world.
The first movie I saw in the theater with my family was Bambi, which totally scarred me for life.
Master Bambi! Don't look back!
I grew up in the mountains of Virginia. Everybody hunted. I was so traumatized.
Along with
Return to Oz is one of the scariest movies that's ever been made for kids. I'm still obsessed with it, but it's so terrifying.
What do you think?
So I have this weird relationship with Disney where it kind of scares me, but I love it.
However, she has a very special connection to Disney.
My grandfather had consulted with Walt Disney on Fantasia. My grandfather, Robert Rogers, was kind of the expert on classical music, and Walt Disney is massively, hugely into classical music, which you can see in his films.
Besides Fantasia, the greatest example of Walt Disney's love for classical music is Disney's Silly Symphonies. In fact, the first one, The Skeleton Dance, used March of the Trolls by the classical composer Edvard Grieg. And because Jennifer's grandfather worked on set,
my dad, as a little kid, got to meet Walt Disney and go on set for all the shows. So there is this family connection to Disney.
And at first, Jennifer didn't know she could become a writer, but she had a related career goal.
For some reason, I was also a huge TV and film fan, and I latched on the idea of being a film director. It was really John Singleton who did Boys in the Hood, who I was a huge fan of. I think what it was about John, if he could do it and make this film that I loved so much, then anybody could. It was possible. I came of age where it was Aladdin, Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, The Lion King, and these films are some of the most cinematic, best stories that ever been made. I ended up going to Harvard, but I studied film. I was like the weird art kid on campus, and I interned at Disney when I was in college for a producer in the old animation building, and we were making a little indie film called Donnie Darko.
It was as though this plan had been with him all his life.
A little $5 million film that was shooting in LA. It was Jake Gyllenhaal, one of his first films that kind of made him a star. Obviously became a cultural phenomenon. We thought it was good. We didn't know it was going to become what it became. That was when my first splash into Hollywood, and I was enamored. So right out of college, I moved straight to LA. My first job was an assistant at Platinum Dunes. It wasn't necessarily the best place to work, especially as a young woman, so I hopped pretty quickly over to New Line, where I ended up getting my dream job to work for Mark Ordesky specifically, and he was making Lord of the Rings at the time, and the Mark became my mentor in the industry. I worked for him all the way through Return of the King. We did a lot of big book to film adaptations, The Golden Compass, Love in the Time of Cholera, and I got to work with a lot of great authors, including folks like Neil Gaiman on the Sandman movie.
Unfortunately, like many projects in Hollywood, the movie wasn't made. But the experience led to something else.
Eventually, in making all these films and working very heavily in development with all these writers, I realized I wanted to write. But I wanted to write books and not films, and film would have been an easier in because that was the business I worked in. But I really wanted to tell big world-building stories.
All fiction has to be as honest as you can make it.
So I just started this journey of teaching myself prose and how to write novels. My debut trilogy was The 13th Continuum, which I'm still very proud of. And it's a YA but crossover sci-fi series. And then it was off to the races. Didn't publish till I was 35.
The big question, how did Jennifer get the dream job of writing tween horror for Disney?
The fact that I write for them wasn't something that I was angling for and anticipating. And my debut trilogy had come out, and through a friend of mine, I'd come to know an editor at Disney named Eric and he hit me up because they were trying to do a new book series of something like Goosebumps with Disney villains for middle grade readers. And they didn't have anything like this. Twisted Tales, Serena's Villains series is really popular, but those are more considered YA. I was a huge fan of Goosebumps growing up. I was totally intrigued, and they're like, well, what villain would you want to do first?
Jennifer had the perfect answer.
Ursula.
Because
you can't really go wrong, but she's so fabulous.
So how does one audition for a book?
I auditioned, I think, with 2.5 chapters, and they had given me like a little thing on what the story could be, but I added a lot, especially because I write very character driven. It was a lot about the character, her situation, really making it compelling for the reader to understand why they might make a deal with someone like Ursula, because Ursula is the queen of the deal.
My dear, sweet child. That's what I do.
They probably auditioned some other writers that were bigger and fancier than me, but they hired me. And I asked them when they did, I said, why did you pick me? And they go, you write great middle grade voice.
It's our little secret.
I've never written middle grade before.
But what is the secret to writing tween horror?
I just lean into the angst. I'm like, just remember how dark and terrible middle school was. I love writing this age. I actually think I like it more than writing YA because the kids are the best. Yes, a ton of adults read this stuff.
Like me.
Me too. But you will never get anything better than an 8-year-old writing to you to say that you're his favorite author in the world.
And that passion showed as the books took off, very early in the process.
The original deal was 3 books, and I did the first 2. Starting the 3rd book, it's all my original pitches. We hadn't even published, they extended the deal to 5, and now we're going to be at 7. So it's been a really exciting whirlwind. I've had the whole series, basically 6 books published in 2 years.
Now, what is this Disney Chills series with the tagline, "The dreams that you fear will come true"?
Disney Chills is a new Brandon book series for Disney, and I pitch it as Goosebumps meets Disney villains. I always say Disney has the best crop of villains.
Perhaps you'd like to see how snake-like I can be.
The diversity of them. The personalities.
What's their heads?
Or with kids with their own problems and things going on, and I bring a villain in and they counter it and have to deal with the consequences of the choices that they make, which is something that's a little bit different than what we've seen in other book series they put out, where they're still in their own universe. So I guess you could say they're cautionary tales. They are spooky. I don't write horror down. They all have dark and terrible endings. I've shocked some of the fandom.
And because of those surprising endings, even a negative review is a positive one.
My favorite reviews that I get, too disturbed by the ending, not sure how I feel, 3 stars. Oh, that's a 5-star review in my mind.
Of course, I needed to learn more about Jennifer's pen name.
We originally came up with the idea of doing a pen name because we liked the idea of creating a persona that was specifically for the kids. I love being Vera Strange. I think I like it more than my normal name, and my guess is I'll be publishing more under that name in the future.
Now it's time to learn about Jennifer Brody's, Vera Strange's new book.
Once Upon a Scream is book 6 from Disney Chills. The story involves a girl named Dawn, which is an homage to Aurora. She is in New York City.
Once upon a time in New York City.
She's at that age where she's got her 2 best friends, but they're starting to do some not great things. Skipping school a little bit, not necessarily making the best choices, but then her best friend shoplifts from a little store. And Dawn doesn't do it, but she doesn't stop her friend, and they get caught by the store security, and the parents get called. So she's shipped off to live with her 2 aunts out in the South in a small town, and it's kind of her punishment, but her parents also want to get her away from the bad influences and into a better school potentially. She's not very happy in the school because the girls aren't very nice. Eventually there's a birthday party and she doesn't get invited, which is something Maleficent understands.
The Maleficent drill. Dawn pricks her finger on a spinning wheel inside an antique shop her aunts own.
Maleficent shows up, and then a lot of crazy things happen.
And this setup connects to Maleficent because...
What is Maleficent really about? It's a christening for the baby, and she shows up, crashes the party.
Nobility, the gentry, even the rabble.
Basically saying, you invited everyone but me. And that's why she death curses the baby, because she wasn't invited to a party. Well, that's a highly relatable thing. Who doesn't understand being excluded from the popular party and how terrible that can make you feel? And I think for kids, that's such a real concept that is very transportable to contemporary life.
Once Upon a Scream is Jennifer's favorite book, but also was her most nerve-wracking to her.
Maleficent is my favorite Disney villain of all time. So I really wanted to do Maleficent justice, and I was a little nervous actually tackling her because of my strong feelings about how amazing she is.
So while Maleficent is Jennifer's favorite villain and Once Upon a Scream her favorite book to write, she has a surprising, or maybe not so surprising, favorite villain voice.
In terms of just enjoyability of the specific writing, Hades was a frickin' blast. Originally, I heard they were going to play Hades kind of straight, but then James Woods came in and he delivered his lines like a used car salesman.
We dance, we kiss, we schmooze, we carry on, we go home happy. What do you say? Come on.
And they were like, oh my God, this is amazing. We never even considered this. We must rewrite the whole character to fit this voicing because it's so fabulous. James Woods, I believe, has said I'm Hades until the end of time and has voiced him in every iteration, including all the video games. So it's so fun writing Hades because he's funny. He's got a sense of humor. He's not evil. He's just mad at Zeus. My brother's a jerk face and I shouldn't be down here. I should rule Mount Olympus. And so the humans are more pawns that he's manipulating, as it is in Greek mythology.
And her least?
My least favorite was Cruella, because she was too dark and terrible even for me.
Yes, I must say, such perfectly beautiful coats.
Her name is literally Cruel Devil, Cruella de Vil. By the end of the book, I was freaking myself out so much, which I guess is a good sign. But Disney always says that no puppies were harmed in the making of my book.
So we are reading book 6. Can we learn about book 7?
The villain I did in book 7 was really fun. Actually, even more fun than I anticipated. It is a he. We do alternate male-female usually in the villain. So he was just a black stripe. That'll be out next year.
And finally, which villain does Jennifer still want to write?
The Evil Queen is top of my list. She was almost book 3, but I guess the generation grew up on a show called Jake and the Neverland Pirates. So this generation of kids loves Captain Hook.
Yes!
I love writing more than anything in the world.
You're so weird.
You have no idea.